You're listening to Prime Sports Tennis with Andrea Leand on the Prime Sports Radio Network. And on today's show, Andrea will let you know what changed over the last month for Simona Halep to finally take over the number one ranking on the WTA Tour, and what lessons has Halep learned that will help her moving forward. Andrea will also talk about another title for Rafa on the men's tour, and much more as Prime Sports Tennis on Prime Sports Network starts now. All right, it's Tuesday, the 10th of October, 2017. I'm your host, Greg DePalma. Thanks again for tuning in to Prime Sports Tennis with our lead tennis analyst and former top 15 player in the world, Andrea Leand. So we have a lot to talk about, as always, here on the show. Andrea, as I mentioned in the open, I guess the big story, we've been talking about this number one ranking for an awfully long time. Of course, it's been wide open this season without Serena, but now Simona Halep has finally got it.
Our fifth new number one of the year, Simona Halep, number one in the world, first Romanian to do so, carrying the country's hopes on her shoulders, pulls through, comes through in Beijing, beat Sharapova, beat Ostapenko, avenging those two losses this year, and comes through in just incredible form. It was the way she did it, Greg. The mindset was there, the confidence was there, the game plan that she likes to play. It was Simona tennis, her brand of tennis, and that's where I feel she was totally invested. And just a different Simona than we've seen, quite frankly, the whole year. So no on-court coaching breaks. There was no sign of any negativity, any issues, any moodiness. It was the confident, upbeat, very, very proactive Simona that we have known for so many years. There's been so much talk this year about this attitude on court. And this was just not the Simona anyone knew back, years ago. I mean, this is someone who is like the little engine that could. She's very small. She's 5'3", one of the smallest players on tour, but she was just this bundle of energy, great dynamic, was named the tour's most popular player on tour 2 years in a row, 2014, 2015, which is kind of the congeniality award. That's how well liked she was. So sweet, so terrific off court, always with a smile, always trying her heart out during the matches. And so no one really understood what was going on this year. And a lot of questions about that. Hopefully they're getting corrected. But it was nice to see her back in form, just really playing really, I think, competitive tennis, really fighting. The tennis itself, I don't know if it's been her best, but it didn't matter because she believed in it. She showed the will to win, and I think that's what made the difference.
Well, we talked a lot this season about all the coaching changes and how even some of these these top players are looking for somebody that fits their game, somebody that they can get along with. We talked a lot about that, of course, with Muguruza and what's gone on with her this season, and how that's actually helped her win a Grand Slam again.
Well, that's a little bit complicated. We talked about Muguruza in a completely different light. Of course, it was Conchita Martinez. She'd had an abysmal year, dismal results, showed no spirit, and then went into Wimbledon with Conchita Martinez, a Fed Cup captain and Spanish Fed Cup captain, and was able to turn everything around in those 2 weeks and just had a real game plan, real substantial strategy and tactic, and was able to turn it around. And that's really been the result that's catapulted her back into the top 10 and actually to number one. She was number one just previous to this. Yeah. So she did win Cincinnati, we should mention, but those have really been the only two results. And it was funny because I was looking, the WTA has their awards at the end, and they have an award for the Player of the Year, and they have Svitolina, Pliskova, Williams, Venus Williams, and Halep. And you wonder, and of course Garbiñe. And you're supposed to vote, and you look at their win-loss percentages, and it's actually Halep and Muguruza are at the bottom part of that. Svitolina, who has the best win-loss record, Pliskova, and then Venus Williams, of course, and has also won more Grand Slam matches than any other player this year. Svitolina with more titles than anyone this year. Wozniacki is right in there. And, of course, she has won a title for the last 9 years and has won more matches on the tour than anyone else. So it's interesting to see, but this subject of coach keeps coming up, and especially with the ladies. I think it was Michael Joyce who is, to me, I think he's so funny. He's coaching Azarenka now, who we hope will be playing in Luxembourg in a couple weeks. But, he has on his Twitter page, he says, the career, profession, coach women's tennis, and it's ... Yeah, I know. What was I thinking? Because it's a little bit of a landmine when you get into coaching, men or women. And but it's definitely very tough to find that right balance. With Simona and Darren, I think it started actually with the Adidas program. Adidas hired, put on retainer a couple of very top coaches, Sven Grunwald and Darren Cahill, and gave their Adidas endorsed players the opportunity to work with them when they wanted. So Simona was able to go in there and work for specific weeks with Darren and really enjoyed it, and I think that was a really good balance between the two.
How long were they together? How long did they start working together?
Well, that was in 2015 when Adidas had this program, but then they decided to dissolve it at the end of 2015, and that's where Simona and Darren decided to try working full-time together in the beginning of 2016. But look, it's been tough, Greg. It's been tough from the beginning. 2016, she was number 2 in the world, had already been number 2 in the world in 2015. And, of course, do you know that she has been consistently in the top 10, more frequently, has a better record in the top 10 than anyone active player out there. So she has been able to stay in that top 10 longer than any active player. So she's had a very consistent record. She was number 2 in the world in 2014 before she began working with him. So she was already established is the point. And she already had her game. She already had built her fundamentals and her foundation. So when you're taking a player like that, it's a matter of more of adjustments and tweaking and refining and maybe adding things here and there and really working as the player evolves physically and mentally. But it was tough. It's been tough for the two of them right from the beginning in 2016.
Well, from your perspective, what were then the pros and cons of their relationship? They all have them. So what?
It's so funny because Pliskova makes things very easy for us. She's split with her coach the last 2 years. She just issued a statement a few weeks ago. I didn't like his vision. I didn't like his direction, and we're not going to work together anymore. And that was the end of it.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, we weren't made privy to all the drama behind the scenes. And quite frankly, I really appreciate that because when you make things public, and it's become very public now with Darren and Simona, this whole relationship has become very public with the coach, and the on-court coaching segments have been very public. And so there's been a lot of attention. The commentating, especially from his own camp, has been really harsh with Simona. So there's been a lot been said. And the positives and negatives. Well, obviously the positives are he is such a well-established coach. He has coached Andre Agassi. He has coached at the end of his career, Leighton Hewitt at the beginning of his career. So he is a player himself. He was a terrific player in his day. From Australia, he was a serve and volleyer, big serve, big forehand, moved forward, like to get to net. Was not a mover, not the athlete that Simona is, and obviously didn't like to hang out on the baseline. So his style is the antithesis of Simona, who likes to be the counterpuncher, 10 feet behind the baseline, hitting topspin, hitting her topspin backhand and forehand. Does not have a big serve, is not a very big player. Darren is very tall, had a big imposing power serve. So the styles are very different, but given the experience Darren has had, and he is so well respected, he is one of the most popular people, I think, in the game. He's just a great guy. He's got such a good soul. This is someone who, when Simona was flying from the Canadian to Cincinnati in a private plane with a bunch of the other tournament people and got scared when they stopped for gas in Buffalo, refused to get back in the plane, it was Darren who said, okay, we'll rent a car and drive to 6 hours. And so there the two of them are driving to Cincinnati for 6 hours and Simona driving. But that actually has become the metaphor, I think, as we see right now, Greg, is that Simona wants to be in the driver's seat, I think, of her own career. She wants to be the one to decide how she trains, how she practices, and how she plays. And I think that it hit a low note in Cincinnati in that Muguruza final. Here Simona had gotten to the final of a premier mandatory tournament. I mean, you would think that'd be a great result. It beat Konta, pulled that one out of the hat, beat Sloane Stephens, who was on a streak, and but just got into this Muguruza match and called for the on-court coaching. Darren came on. And I think he was trying to encourage her by saying, show me what you have, show me what you have. But she seemed to feel embarrassed by it all and just completely shut down and never won another game. And there was a public apology telling the public she was sorry she could not do, quote-unquote, Darren's advices with the English. And Andre Pavel, a guy from her home country, was flown in for the U.S. Open to join the team. And so obviously they felt that to process a message and to balance the team out, they brought Andre Pavel in. And in fact, Greg, that is who she worked with after the Open. She sat down, she said, with Darren after she lost to Sharapova. He told her it was her serve that was the real problem in the match. And so she went back to Romania and decided that she was going to, practice her serve an hour a day, which for her was a lot.
Yeah.
And when Darren said, please don't hurt yourself, she said, nope, I'm okay, and I'm going to do it. And when she got to Beijing with Pavel, you could just see that she had taken ownership, really, of her training. That because she had invested really in what she worked on, that it didn't really matter what the tactics were on court. She was going to win. She was so invested now in the fact she had taken control of her tennis. She was going to win these matches, and she went right through Sharapova 2-2. And then when she could have floundered against Ostapenko in the second set, down 4-3, you saw her on the break, calm, relaxed, no sign at all of any negativity, any desire to give up. And instead, she went right back out there. She changed her game. She hit some higher topspin, which bothered Ostapenko, cost her some unforced errors, and then just never looked back.
Well, look, I don't think that that's a coincidence, and I'm sure nobody does. We talked about what happened to her at the U.S. Open with Sharapova, and then we talked about this potential match set up last week, and what would happen, going up against Sharapova again if they did, so to see a complete difference in her game. After changing a few things, coaching, maybe her serve, maybe her mental approach, whatever changed from the Open to what she did to Sharapova and going all the way to the final, not winning it, but going all the way to the final last week, whatever it was, that was good enough. And I'm sure now that she's number one, hopefully she'll be able to take that and go, see, that whatever it was, it worked. And maybe that confidence will kick in, and maybe next year will be her best year.
Well, I don't think this is really any different than any of these other players we've been talking about all year needing to take ownership of their tennis. And they really have to step up and not rely on the coach to do it all, not rely on the coach to do all the thinking and to organize everything, and really take ownership. We've talked about it with Madison Keys. We talked about it with Jack Sock, with Nick Kyrgios. Lots of these players in their mid-20s, obviously their earlier 20s, and really stepping up. Because when the team is working harder than the player, that there's something wrong there. And I think that when we saw Madison step up to the plate and going back to Lindsay Davenport, there was a little bit of a juxtaposition there where Madison had to take more responsibility in what she wanted to do. And we're still waiting right now for Jack Sock and Nick Kyrgios to do that. They both retired today in Shanghai. There was obviously a very warm day, a very hot day, but it seemed to bother them more than anyone else. Jack retired down 2-1 to Dukapolov in the first round. Nick Kyrgios, who did get to the final last week in Beijing, losing to Nadal. He did beat Sasha Zverev there in the semis, but just had nothing left in the tank this week and retired his match to Stevie Johnson after losing the first and just saying, you know what, I'm too tired. And that's it. I'm too tired. I don't feel well. And I believe him, Greg, and I believe Jack Sock because they're not in shape, because they haven't put in the work. And, Jack hired Jay Berger. Has it been a party for Jay Berger this year? Probably not, because it's very hard to get Jack on a program when he's living in Kansas City. and he went home to Kansas City. He's Mr. Kansas City now with all the different teams and the football and so forth, and doesn't really have the focus that many feel to do the right prep work in these tournaments. So he started off the year great. He's plateaued. He's still, around the top 20. He'll probably drop after this. But we have a lot of players that, we're really waiting to see step up to the plate and take ownership of their tennis.
Well, somebody that's definitely taken ownership is French woman. Now, is the right term Frenchman or French woman for Caroline Garcia? Is it Frenchman?
I'm going to go with French woman. I don't know if that's politically correct, but I'm going to go with French woman. We'll go with French champion. How about that?
I don't think she cares.
They're calling it the Great Hall, Haul, because she just won Wuhan and Beijing back-to-back. I mean, you're talking about two major events on the tour. Has catapulted her into the top 10 for the first time since, obviously, a French woman since Marismo. Then there was Pierce before that. So this is a great occasion, especially for the French Tennis Federation that was just bemoaning the fact they didn't have a player in the top 10 on the women's side. And we all thought it was going to be Milanovic. She started off the year with such a bang and was just going through everyone. Beat Muguruza at the French Open, beat Sharapova in Stuttgart. And she was the hot player. And lo and behold, she gets to Wimbledon. As you remember, took that slip in the first round, playing Alison Risk, and just decided that, she had hurt her. She said she strained her thigh. And if you can believe it, Greg, literally this week, she finally pulled out of Beijing, went home because she said she was still suffering from this slip back at Wimbledon.
Wow.
And she had been injured all this time and playing injured. Well, whatever the case is, the last laugh has gone to Garcia, her former doubles partner. They were ranked number one in the world at one point, and they split because Garcia felt that Milanovic was being too bossy and telling her what to do too much, and she wasn't able to really shine because Milanovic wanted all the attention and wanted to be the star. She got heavily criticized for skipping Fed Cup this year because she said she had injured her back. But it was that break she credits for now all her success in this last part of the season, especially in the last 2 weeks. She said she was able to do the training, get in condition that she needed to really play to her potential. And she's a great athlete. I don't know if you've watched her a lot, but she's a great athlete. She's got a lot of shots. Her serve is dodgy. She's got that abbreviated swing, which really makes the serve vulnerable. And, she's improved her movement, but she's still inconsistent at times, mentally especially. So, but on these 2 weeks, she got into a good role. She was thinking well. She problem solved, and she really hung tight in the tough spots, especially against Svitolina, where she was down match point and pulled out of that one, and then beat Halep, as we mentioned, in the final.
All right. So now you said that she's number 8 because are we having now?
Well, she's 8 on the race. She's just taken Konta out of the WTA finals in Singapore for the moment. Now Konta is due to play in Moscow, which is next week. That's the last week of the regular tour. So Garcia was entered in Tianjin, which is in China this week. She was actually due to play the wild card Maria Sharapova in the first round. She obviously pulled out, so she is not playing this week. It remains to be seen if she's going to take a wild card next week to try and make sure Konta does not catch up to her. Konta would have to get to the final of Moscow without Garcia playing next week to boot her out for that last slot.
Okay, so there's just one more slot
available?
We
have the first 7. Ostapenko is in. So she is
in. It's Kuznetsova does she still have a chance to get in?
Who?
Kuznetsova. Does she still have?
No, she's done.
She's done.
She
okay.
did not do well in this last part of the year.
All right.
She really has not had a great year. I think, I think what happened last year and her having to race to Moscow to get those points and win that title and then fly to Singapore, I think that just wore her out. She's never been the same this year since all that traveling and playing.
Okay. All right. So at least there's a little bit of drama there. Now, I know when we talked about the men's rankings a few weeks ago, we had Rafa and Roger, and they were the only two that had clinched, even though we had a good idea that there was a few others that were definitely going to get in, and they were just another week or two that they would be clinched. So how's the men's side look right now? What do we got? Do we still have some unknowns? Of course, we've had some injuries.
We do have a lot of unknowns because, as we mentioned, 5 of the top guys who still are dropping in the rankings, are AWOL. We don't have Novak, Stan, Andy, of course, Nishikori, Raonic. By the way, Raonic, who had this wrist issue and could not hit a backhand, but so wanted to compete, flew over to Japan anyway. And even though he couldn't hit a backhand, ended up pulling calf muscle and pulling out of that tournament. So he's out. So because these guys are still lingering, they will not play, though, in the ATP final in London. But we're looking at, David Goffin is really the one wild card because he's been playing great tennis in the last few weeks, and he's obviously trying to do everything he can to make it.
Yeah, and so Wawrinka's not going to be in as well. He's 7th right now.
He won't. He's not going to be playing, so you can count him out.
Yeah, so it looks like Thiem will probably be next because Sasha's now clinched since the last time we looked at the rankings. So 3 have clinched. So Thiem looks like he's going to clinch. Then you got Dimitrov, Cilic. They look pretty safe. You mentioned Goffin. So then it ends up where we have Carina Busta and Sam Querrey. Does he?
Sam Querrey had the last spot, but of course he didn't play last week, and he won his first round in Shanghai, so that will help him.
Okay.
Actually, he did play last week, just didn't do very well. But he definitely has a shot. So we're gonna keep our hopes for Sam Querrey for the Americans.
Yeah.
Obviously there's a lot coming out today about Andy Murray. He says he will be ready for the Australian. So now we have Novak and Andy planning to play the Australian.
That's good.
Talk about coaching, though. Once again, he said that the word coming out is that he felt in the off season going into this 2017 year that when he was working with Yvonne in Florida in the off season that Yvonne just ran him into the ground and worked him so hard at a time where he probably should have been letting his body rejuvenate from 2016. So I think we're going to see a coaching change there. I don't know who it's going to be. Novak has come out with his new team. His brand new team. He will have Agassi in his corner, but there's going to be a host of other new faces as well. So, this is not very uncommon, Greg, to see this. And I think that part of the reason is why these academies do so well and why that Adidas program did so well is I think it's very hard to deal with just a one-on-one relationship in such large doses and such a concentration of time when you're on that tour week in, week out. And I think it does get difficult. And so we've seen a lot of top players, move it around, change the balance, bring in a fresh face, bring in a fresh voice. And that's what keeps the whole equation, going. So I think we will see that. And, even Kasatkina, the younger girls, are starting to make coaching changes. So the coach is very important. And finding a balance, I think, in the whole entire picture is very important.
Now, Nick Kyrgios continues to have some
Speaking
crazy.
of coaches, right?
Yeah, he needs one because we can't keep up with him from week to week. He goes to the final, beats Sasha, almost wins the event.
Announces he's now building a school for underprivileged kids in Australia. By the way, he's looking for land in Melbourne.
Okay.
Now he has a cause to play for. He says he's going to funnel his money into this. Type of sports and center where they can play sports and have a bed and have food and just relax and chill out, and it's for kids who don't have a disadvantage in some way. So which is a great thing. We all applaud him, but it's again, if it motivates him, great, but again, these 20-something-year-olds really, it's a little bit of a Bermuda Triangle. They get into that age, and you don't know who's going to come out the other end.
Yeah, it looks like it because he lost. He retired against Stevie Johnson, right, in Shanghai.
Yeah, he lost the first set. He's just too tired. I mean, Kyrgios and Sock haven't trained properly, so they're just getting tired. That's all. It's and there's no big secret about it. All the guys know it. They all say it. They just, at this point, they just try to keep these two out on court as long as they can until they get tired.
Yeah, so his chances of possibly making his way through not looking good as far as the finals are concerned.
Yeah, I mean, he made his points back, a lot of his points back. He won Tokyo last year, which is a smaller event leading into Shanghai. Of course, it was in Shanghai. He had that incident with on the match with Misha Zverev, which cost him that care plan program. But no, he made his points back, I think, in Tokyo by doing so well in Beijing. And so he'll still coast in the, hovering around the top 20 mark.
Yeah. So, by the way, Jared Donaldson's taking on Nadal, I see. That's the next match for those
now, this
two
is
in
a guy
Shanghai.
who works. This is a guy who's got a great work ethic. This is a guy who's done actually the best of all that next gen American group. TFO, by the way, will also be in action against Query tomorrow.
That's a good one.
He's also done very well. Those two guys, I think, are our top two guys, and they hopefully will both be in Milan. That's where TFO will be there. I think Donaldson is in.
Well, if you look at Nadal, unfortunately, these Americans are on Nadal's section because you have Donaldson against Nadal. Then beneath that, in the other quarter, you have Query against Tiafoe, and then you have Harrison going up against Dimitrov. So you have Harrison, Tiafoe, Query, and Donaldson. Unfortunately, with Nadal in that section. We're not really looking too good there. But anyway, it's good to see that there are some Americans all with an opportunity to advance. And maybe Rafa will run out of gas.
I think there are a lot of eyes on Federer now. And now this is the first tournament that both he and Rafa have been in are fated to play each other. And where apparently Roger is fit. The U.S. Open was the last time they were in the same draw, and Roger was not fit enough and lost to Delpo before reaching Rafa. So, hopefully Roger is fit. I have to say that, he trained so well for the Australian and so well to win Wimbledon as well. And, of course, the American Sunshine Double. And he had a great first 6 months of the year, 7 months of the year. And then I don't think he approached the American swing with the same intensity and the same time commitment. As we mentioned, he's been all over the place. He's somewhat reinvented the way you approach tennis events with his Labor Cup. That was a huge success. But, he got to the Canadian, was at concerts, didn't shave, not the same Roger we're used to, and came up with the back injury, and that really has hampered him. So we're hoping he's going to be fit enough now in Shanghai. This is a Masters 1000, tons of points. And although I think he has kind of given up a little bit mathematically on the number one ranking for this year, you never know. So it'll be interesting to see if he can keep his streak alive and face Nadal. Now, I think he's got a tougher draw than he thinks. He's going to have Diego Schwartzman to play in his first match, and it's the second round. He had a bye. And that guy's been playing tough tennis. He's the one who beat Thiem at the Canadian. He's such a tough fighter. He's not a big guy at all, but he's just so tenacious on that baseline. And he really can hit the ball. I mean, he can hit winners as well. So I think he has a pretty tough draw. He's got Goffin in his quarter, and then perhaps the winner of Sasha Zverev and Thiem.
Yeah, and Sasha Zverev, was he going up if he wins his next match, goes up against Del Potro?
I think that, that's one for Sasha Zverev too. I think it'll be a good test because Del Potro is such a veteran and has some big shots, but it'll be up to Sasha to see if he can, get to that backhand and really control the tempo. Yeah,
and then Isner, he wins his match, he goes up against Thiem. So that ended up too bad of a opportunity for another American. There's more Americans than the ones I just mentioned. You got Isner possibly against Thiem if he wins his next match, and so there's still some others that are good for us USA fans. And by the way, Kevin Anderson, let's also mention him because who went to the final of the U.S. Open. Kevin Anderson still has a shot as well to get into the ATP finals. So if he has a good showing this week. He can boost up his points, and there's a chance.
He has a good draw until he will probably face Cilic in the quarters, and that will be a tough match.
Yep. All right, sounds good. So we will of course be here to follow it all.
I think the biggest question is going to be is in Singapore, where we find out really who ends the year at number one, and I think. Yeah. Greg, I think we're going to see a lot of movement for number one for the next year. I don't think there's going to be one player that's going to dominate. Yes, Serena will be back, by the way. She has, I think, informed the Australian Open that she intends to play, so that's great news. And as we mentioned, Bika will be back in a couple weeks. Maria is playing a small tournament in Tianjin, which gives her enormous opportunity to get some points and get that ranking up closer to the top 50. Right now, she's around just inside the top 100. So there's really no one in that tournament that she should have any trouble with. So it's a good opportunity there. And but even though I don't see any of those three, quite frankly, playing a full season for various different reasons. So I think we're still going to see the same names in the ranking vying for number one next year with Pliskova, Svitolina, Halep, Wozniacki, Muguruza, really playing a full schedule. And Greg, you're going to have to choose. Who do you think will end the year at number one?
Garbiñe.
You do?
Yep. I think she deserves it. I think she's...
Why do you think she deserves it?
Well, I think she's been the best player since Wimbledon. And I know it's not a whole year.
Now, why do you say that?
Well, I think winning Wimbledon helped. I get she didn't play well at
Since
US
Wimbledon,
Open.
she's won one tournament, Cincinnati.
Yeah, it's a win. And I know she didn't play well at the US Open. I completely get that. But it's also because none of the other players have stepped up. It's really not – it's almost like a process of elimination based on the fact that nobody just took it. And so I'm basing it on, okay, right now, if there was actually a finals and I was going to pick a player and they all knew that they had to face each other, like, what we're going to see in a few weeks. All right, we're all going to get together. We're going to play this big finals. Who's the best? I would go with Garbiñe. I think she's
You think
the best.
She's actually just the best player? Just for
True.
putting all the results, because she's had terrible results, by the way, over in Asia. She's not played well at all.
Yes, true.
But with the exception of Cincinnati, she and Wimbledon, she's done nothing all year. But the fact is, you think she is actually, as far as just quality of player, the best player.
Yeah, and I take the Wimbledon. I'm somebody that really does hold in any sport. I love players and teams that win the big ones, and she's the one out of this group that's won the big one. And because there's no Sloane, there's no Ostapenko, there's no Serena, and so there's only one other player, and that's Garbiñe. And I think
that's certainly good reasoning. I understand. I think you have a lot of people in that camp because they think she's generally the best player. And as you said, she won a Grand Slam, and that counts. And Pliskova and Halep have not won a Grand Slam yet. And there's a lot of conversation about that, why there's so many number ones who have not won a Grand Slam, actually.
Yeah.
But including Wozniacki. I think those are all great credentials for her to win that award, and we'll have to see next week if she can keep it together. I think that they're.
Who do you like?
Well, the funny thing will be is if Svitolina ends up at number one, she actually is the only one who's been there in contention and not grabbed it yet.
Well, don't you think that she, if we throw out the Grand Slams, Svitolina probably does deserve it.
Oh, she's by far the number one player this year if you threw out the Grand Slams because she has the best match win-loss record. She has won more titles than anyone. She's won big titles, including the Canadian Open. Mm-hmm. So, she would definitely on paper be the number one. Pliskova, obviously with a year's worth of results, and we're still, adding in last year's results for the fall, and that's how she became number one in the ranking because she had a pretty good fall. But and of course, Halep's had a good year too, a better year than she had last year. So it's interesting. As you're right, though, they're all inheriting this ranking. They're not, with Serena out, who was number one for so long. It was never an issue. It was never a question because she just commanded that spot. But we'll have to see. I think what happens in Singapore. I'm going to go with the winner of Singapore. That's my feeling. Whoever wins Singapore is the number one.
Well, leave it to
Venus. She'll win. Watch Venus win Singapore.
Yeah, leave it to the women, and it'll probably watch Garcia win Singapore. Leave it to the women as somebody that we're not even putting into the equation as a potential best player of the year.
Watch it be Ostapenko and Garcia in the final. And let me tell you, I will not be surprised because they're not playing with any fear. They're not playing with any pressure. And I could absolutely see both of them because they both have such big shots and big weapons. I could see it because, it's a round robin in the beginning. And so you play a round robin, and then the two best in each group go to the semis. So you do get a lot of matches over there.
So do they play again next week before the finals, or is this it this
week?
No,
most of them will take the week off. Svitolina is playing in Hong Kong this week. So is Venus. That's to me just, I don't think Svitolina had to play, but I'm sure it's a very lucrative offer for her to go there.
Yeah.
Venus needed some matches. She hasn't played at all since the Open. No, most of the players will not play next week. They will go right into Singapore.
And with that starting on, is that starting the 22nd or the 23rd? Is that like a Sunday for us? Is that how
You
it
know
works?
what? Now you're going to just have to check because they're 12 hours ahead.
I know. That kinda
so they're, their Monday is our Sunday.
Yeah. So, and then how long was that a whole week kind of deal? Are they going to be there all week?
It's a whole week. They play a round robin for the first 3 or 4 days, and then they have the semis on Saturday, the finals on Sunday.
Okay, so next week.
Check your local listings. That's what I think.
Well, we'll make sure that, because I don't know if you recollect when they're going to have the whole schedule for that. So whenever they come up with the schedule next week, that's probably when we'll air our show. Hopefully they'll have it by middle of the week. You think they should have it by the middle of next week?
I would think by Thursday or Friday our time, they should have both groups organized. Actually, I take it back. No, they're not going to have it, and I'll tell you why. They got to see how Kanta does in Moscow. So this draw will not be made until that tournament is over, unless Kanta loses early.
Okay.
So they will have to wait and see what happens till the end of that week before they make the draw.
All right. Well, then.
I mean, I can't imagine them making the draw without having all 8 women, knowing all 8 women in the draw.
Yeah, so then listeners, you'll have to stand by and we'll let you know. That's why you have to follow us on Twitter at PrimeSN, because we'll let you know exactly. Or, of course, go to the Prime Sports Network homepage. And every Monday we have our week schedule, and then you'll be able to check it out there, or we'll tweet it out and let you know when we're going to have our show next week, because we'd like to have our show, if we can, if it's possible, to have it when we know what the schedule is going to be like, since it will start, I believe, on a Sunday, our time. And so, but we'll let you know.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll let you know. All right, sounds good, Andrea. Appreciate your time as always, and looking forward to talk to you again next week.
I can't wait. Thanks so much.
You got it. All right, so that'll wrap it up here for the Prime Sports Radio Network Prime Sports Tennis Show. You can follow us on Twitter, as we mentioned, at PrimeSN. You can receive our on-demand programming alerts. You can also go to PrimeSportsNetwork.com, as we mentioned, to check out our shows when they are available on demand, including iTunes and YouTube under Prime Sports Network. Don't forget to check out our end of the season 2017 Aces Award show here. That's a special show here on Prime Sports Tennis. Thanks for tuning in to Prime Sports Tennis with Andrea Leand. I'm Greg DePalma. We'll see you next time.